Yeah, MLB Data Warehouse, where the spreadsheets flow and the takes get spicy. John, Tim, Doc, let's go. Welcome to the warehouse, stats stacked to the ceilings. Exit below's flying, launch angles got a feeling. Tim in the corner with the prospect report, reading fan graphs, blurbs like it's soft court sport. Junior and double A, Tim's losing.
Welcome to the Prospect Warehouse podcast. This is your host, Tim Kanak. You can find me on X at Fantasy Aceball. And if you're watching, you see it's not Johnny who knows nothing about prospects. We got Owen Hurd in today. Owen_FBB for the follow on the X. What up, Owen?
What up, Tim? Thanks again for having me. Always good to talk some prospects with you.
Yeah, for sure. And this is your first time doing a T10 with me. So I've been doing this for a while now. I started doing it with the Welsh on Prospect One, where I would write up my top 10 prospects of the week, kind of carried it over to Fantasy Pros, and now here at the warehouse. So the T10s, they used to be P10s when it was Prospect One. Now they're the T10s for Tim 10 or top 10 or whatever you want to, what have you. But they've migrated between 3 different sites now at this point. So that's fun. Let's get to number 10. Who is Tanner Franklin with the St. Louis Cardinals. I actually saw him a few weeks ago, so I'll throw some video up of him in a second here. But on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube or XVision, I highly recommend it. I made John redo his entire minor league tabs. I was like, bro, you have 2026 only on here, and that's not cool. Because what if I want to go back? We're only 1 week into the season. What if I want to go back and look at second half of 2025 with 2026 and whatever. And so I made him combine 2025 and 2026. So every single sub to MLB Data Warehouse who now has access to a sheet that has 2 years of data on it can thank me and subscribe because of me now. So we have here Tanner Franklin. And I talked about him a lot this offseason, Owen. I drafted him, and I can't remember if I got him in our 30 teamer or if it was the other 30 teamer that I got him in. But I've been all about Tanner Franklin all offseason. I'm like, man, his fastball shape is ridiculous. I hadn't even seen him in person. And you could see here, 96, 11 inches of vert before the induced vertical break. So that's more like 18, 19. And then 5.3 inches of horizontal movement, 18.2 swinging strike rate. That's on his A-ball data from last year. And then we just had another amazing start from him. I'm going to let you talk about Franklin before I kind of close out with why he made this list here.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I love bigger body pitchers with good fastballs. I think it's just such a really good combination to build off of. I think the slider is also really interesting to me. I think as a secondary, it might not be plus, but I think it's not quite kind of like a Peyton Tolley type situation where you have the fastball and when he was drafted, that is, and kind of not really an established second pitch. And, we'll see how the buildup goes if he can kind of accumulate the innings. I think the control is a little bit better than some people give him credit for. I like the delivery a lot too. So I think there's some interesting ingredients here and excited to see how he looks over a kind of full starter's workload.
Yep. So last week, 9 strikeouts, 2 walks, really nice start. And I thought that he really showed off what I'm assuming is a sinker. He never really threw one last year, but I think that the Cardinals have had him throwing a sinker, and it looks like that has a lot of 2-seam movement to it. This new pitch that it looked like got a lot of the strikeouts from last start. So Tanner Franklin throws a fastball, gets up to 102 on the fastball. I give him a 65 out of 70 grade on that fastball. I think it's an elite pitch. Which is really what he leaned on as a reliever in college in Tennessee last year. But he also throws a cutter, changeup, sweeper. The sweeper's pretty solid. I threw a 50 out of 60 on that sweeper. And that sinker, he was hitting 97, 98, 99 on that the other day. Mostly 97, 98s on that sinker. But that thing has some wicked movement when you pair that against his fastball. And that's what seemed to get a lot of the strikeouts. So on the command, I gave him a 35 out of 45. But I think that he's a top 200 prospect at least at this point. And if he keeps this up, it's possible he makes it in the top 150. I actually posted, and I was actually texting Jeff Ponce, and I was like, I think he might be better than Liam Doyle. Because I watched both of these guys in the same spring breakout game. And Frank, look at that. He just looks so much better like way more polished than Doyle. Like his he's throwing like just as hard, if not harder, than Doyle with way less effort. Like every time Doyle throws it, like he's just like, oh, like just like massive loud grunt, like rah! Like it's taking like everything out of him. Whereas Franklin just like so effortless. Watch this pitch here. This easy pitch, 97. So and actually he was way better against like Willits and Dean too, like good hitters than Doyle was. So I'm pretty high on Tanner Franklin. Actually comped him to Cam Schlittler. Had to watch my pronunciation there, Owen.
Cam, don't call me.
All right. You got anything else on Franklin before we move to the next guy?
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of guided my kind of approach to college arms is I'm usually more of a late adopter when it comes to college arms, especially in the low minors. It's kind of more of a want to wait and see until they get to kind of more age appropriate competition, just kind of how the pitch mix looks. You know, obviously when you have a guy that pitched in the SEC, especially in the lower minors, it's for me it's kind of a let's see when they get to high A, double A how we're looking over here. But I think Franklin definitely has the fastball that can, in my opinion, get upper minors hitters out right now. It's just kind of where does the rest of the pitch mix looks, and how does the control look as you kind of get to hitters who are going to lay off stuff more out of the zone better.
Yep, for sure. Number 9 on the list is an outfielder. It is Brendan, I guess would be the pronunciation, Tunink with the Dodgers. So, oh my gosh, yes, another Dodgers outfield prospect that we all have to pay attention to now.
Scary embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, they're all outfielders too. Like they don't, nobody good on their team plays any other positions, outfield only. But you could see, even though I made John add 2025 data, we don't have it because he played in complex in 2025, and this is kind of a dude who is a bit underrated. Last year, like out of some of these like high pop complex guys, because he had a 440 BABIP, but he did it 300, 417, 550 with 5 bombs and 9 steals. So a lot of tools here that he showed off in complex, a lot of swing and miss also. But so far you can see this season, so this last week, 3 home runs, 1 steal, hitting 500. Now, again, take that with a bit of grain of salt. 68% contact rate, 68.8 or whatever, I guess you round up to 69. So, like maybe not the best hit tool here for Tunink, but the dude is a bag of tools. And I give him a 30 out of 40 hit, 30 out of 45 on the plate approach, 50 out of 60 on the power, 60 speed. He was unranked in my prospect rankings. I did not even have him on my Dodgers. Actually, he was the very last guy on my Dodgers list. He did not make my top 20. He was like number 22 or 23 or something in the Dodgers org when I did my rankings, but he did not make my top 20 list. But he's going to be in there now, I think. I know it's just 1 week, but like after watching more of this kid, there's just a lot of tools here. My comp from is actually Trent Grisham without the defense, just because there's a lot of swing and miss, a lot of tools. He has a pretty decent eye. What do you think about Tunink? Tunink? I don't know if it's Tunink or Tunink.
May we ever find out. I think one thing that really stands out to me is just his swing. It's just he does I think the swing is kind of geared for, he can go down and kind of get pitches like that. I think the bat path is one thing that I'll be watching and see how the Dodgers are able to tweak his swing a little bit, because I do think it leaves him vulnerable, especially when you get to better located secondaries and better, stuff high and away that can paint the corners of the zone as you get to the upper minors. But I think Tunink's interesting. I like the Grisham comp you throughout, kind of smaller sample sizes here, but I think another guy that just add to the Dodgers' embarrassment of riches and outfield prospects. And I think it's an interesting profile, and I think I'm excited to see him rise up the ranks this year. I think we could be looking at a potential top 10 Dodgers prospect by midseason.
Yeah, he's pretty interesting just from power speed, and it's like, okay, the Dodgers though, it's just they have so many of these guys. Probably gets traded, don't you think? Like trade guy. I'm of the stance that somebody's got to go. You've got Sirota, Hope, DePaula, and then you kind of have these also lower, like Landon Vitorek is also really interesting to me. And then you got Tunink, and you have if you look at their system, there's at least those 5 guys and a few more that I'm probably missing that could project as
regulars in the outfield. And it's like, where do you play all these guys?
Yeah, for sure. So the next guy, number 8 on my list, this is another dude. I drafted him, I think, in both of my 30-teamers. I love this guy. He's a ton of fun. It's Brian Curley with the Diamondbacks. He's a short dude. And this dude has a ton of attitude, which, like, if you like Liam Doyle, then you like Brian Curley too, because this guy, like, taunts dudes on the mound. He's, like, dancing on the mound and stuff like that. He's, like, one of Friedman's favorites. He's, like, a pitching ninja favorite here, Brian Curley. So 5'10", 212 pounds, built like a bulldog. Does a lot. Like, I comped him. This is my comp. Marcus Stroman on steroids, because he's like a short dude, way more jacked, like has even cockier probably on the mound than Stroman. And he does a lot of the Stroman stuff, like the stuff that people think Stroman invented, right? Where he's like does like the delayed pitching, like Nestor Herman type stuff that like really like Stroman was like the first one I think to do like the weird like different deliveries. Like most of the time pitchers, they teach you to pitch the same way every time so that you have fine mechanics and for better tunneling. But like Stroman was always like doing these weird things like that. So that's kind of the comp that I have for him. But the dude throws 100 miles an hour, and he had 7 strikeouts and 0 walks in only 58 pitches the other day. This is his first ever professional start. So he started. There's definitely like major relief pitcher risk here for him. Like I've got him as a top 250 prospect. But if he's a reliever, I think he's like a dominant closer because he hits 100 on the fastball. Slider's good, like mid 80s slider, maybe like above average. I don't know if I'd call that a plus pitch. Curve is also pretty solid. Like he throws a curve 80, like low 80s, which is kind of a harder curve. Maybe call that a sweeper actually. But I think that's also an above average pitch. So I think as long as he's locating, like he's smaller to be a starter, but there's been a lot of smaller starters have success lately. Logan Henderson for one. So maybe he does make it as a starter. Like this is the first good positive step for him. But like worst case scenario, I think you got a high leverage reliever here with Brian Curley.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on the floor. I think it's interesting when you have a guy that was kind of previously in the bullpen that throws like 3 breaking balls and then can hit his fastball up to 100. The size is definitely the kind of one concern for me. I'm, knowingly not the biggest fan of kind of undersized pitchers, but I think you can kind of see like the early makings of a potential starter here if some of the secondaries can come along a little bit to the level of his fastball and slider.
Yeah, I threw some video up of him so you can actually see. He's definitely a shorter dude, but he's pretty 212 for 5'10" is pretty stocky. So look at this dude. You're gonna have to look up, go to pitcher list on X if you're interested, and just look up or not pitcher list, look up Pitching Ninja Brian Curley, and you'll have to see like this guy's fun. So check that out for sure.
I think another thing that interests me too is like there's a bit of effort in the delivery, but the release height. And when you have that combined with a 100-mile-per-hour fastball, I think it can help the stuff play up a little bit. Whether that's in a starter relief role, kind of to be determined. But Diamondbacks have a lot of really interesting guys with just kind of plus stuff, and it's just maybe they can stick as a starter, or maybe you've got just a farm system of potential electric high leverage guys.
Yep, for sure. Next on the list, another pitcher. It's Big Ben Hess with the New York Yankees. Ben Hess at AA, 9 strikeouts, 3 walks in less than 80 pitches. First start out. So you got to love seeing him do that at AA first start. I think that he's a guy who could make the majors this year. So I'd keep a lookout on him. I actually like him as having a higher fantasy potential than a guy like Elmer Rodriguez Cruz.
Agreed.
Just because I think he's going to get a lot more strikeouts, whereas like ERC, I guess he just goes by Elmer Rodriguez now, right? So we got 2 E-Rods. But like he's more of like a generate bad contact, sinker first type guy who's probably going to have decent whips, like not give up a lot of runs, but probably won't get a ton of strikeouts. But I think Ben Hess could be like a solid number 2, number 3 type starter with tons of heat here. Come to the Lance Lynn, big boy, 6'5", 255 pounds. So he got the big starters build, and he's got the starters arsenal too: fastball, slider, curve, change up. Like that's like your classic starting pitcher arsenal for Ben Hess.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, it's, as a righty, you don't love to see him kind of sitting 93 on the fastball. But I think when you look at the organization he's in, long track record of helping their guys add some velo. And then, you look at, as you said, the mix, there's at worst like 4 average probably slightly above average pitches in his mix with good control. I think it's a viable long-term rotation profile. I think where the upside is just going to be a matter of, can he add a couple more ticks to that fastball? Because the shape is great. And I think if he's sitting 95, 96, you're potentially now looking at a guy who could be a good number 2.
Yeah, he's topped at 99, so he can get there. It's just like, how high effort is it going to take him to live in that range? I mean, he's a big dude, so like he could probably do it. You would think that, I mean, like that's just kind of like assuming, but like you'd think like a bigger dude would have a better chance of being able to hold the kind of velocity more than like a smaller dude like Curley that we just talked about. So talk about polar opposite guys that we just talked about right there. So number 6 on the list is John Heel. So John Heel is actually spelled Gil. He's with the Atlanta Braves. Big time prospect riser with me and with a lot of other people. Top 200 prospect for me. 5 steals already. Week 1. 1 home run, 5 steals, hitting 300. Let me throw a stat line up here real quick if John's page will load. This thing just took a poop. So anyway, John Heel, I comped him to CJ Abrams' skill profile. I don't think that he looks like that, though. He's bigger. He's 6'1", 175. Looks more athletic. Actually, looks like he has a more athletic, consistent swing than Abrams, despite bad contacts, like only 61%. Like pretty low contacts even last year. So like I do worry about that, but the swing looks from like a mechanic standpoint and like a visual standpoint, it looks pretty good. So I think that his contact skills and his hit tool is something that is going to grow as he improves. And he like right now he's just like relying on tools, but I think he can develop a better hit tool. So I actually gave him a 30 out of 50 on the hit tool, where I think right now he's a 30, but I think he can get to an average hit tool because I do really like the swing. Plate approach, I give him a 45 out of 55, power a 40 out of 50, and a speed of 60 out of 70. I like to see that he's more aggressive on the base pass so far earlier this year, but he did get caught quite a bit last year on the base pass too, so he can be a better runner. Like his speed is probably 70 grade, like from a physical standpoint, but he's got to develop a better, like a more keen base running ability.
Agreed. I think he kind of reminds me a bit of like kind of a Luis Laura type player if the power doesn't come along, like a guy who's going to hit enough to get into the lineup, maybe, in kind of, peak years, if we'll see how the power develops, still a little earlier on for Heel, but maybe a guy who's going to be kind of a, maybe like 8 to 10 home run guy in some of his better seasons. I think with profiles like Heel's, I agree with you. I really like the swing. I think I like his ability, even though he's aggressive. I don't think he expands the zone too much. So I do think the hit tool can eventually be a carrying one. Just with guys like that, I kind of like to see, I think it's more of a speed first profile right now. So for fantasy, I'd like to see kind of one of the hit tool or the power look like it could be kind of a carrying tool in the profile. Otherwise, I have a lot of potential platoon risk for him, or a lot of kind of, short side platoon future, especially with his defense not being at the level of his speed.
Yep, for sure. And you just saw, I put some video up of a game that he had recently. Nice swing. So next on the list, number 5 is Owen Murphy with the Braves. So talk about going back to another shorter pitcher here. Owen Murphy, gotta love the induced vertical break. He had 10 strikeouts, I think this week. 10 strikeouts, 2 walks. Getting up to, I think I read somewhere that he hit up to 22-inch induced vertical break on that fastball a couple times. This is always a dude that I've loved. And talk about throwing 93. He throws 93, but I think because of the movement on that fastball, it doesn't really matter that he's not pumping 95, 96. Like, it just makes the fastball play up so much more, especially coming from our lower release point. My comp for him is Dylan C. smash with Brian Wu. And on Prospect 1, Welsh had me on, and I gave like a couple predictions. And like one of my bold predictions for this year is that Owen Murphy was, and this is before this game, obviously, when I did this with him. I said Owen Murphy was going to be the Brian Wu of this year, where basically like Brian Wu just kind of popped out of nowhere, was never on like top 100 lists or anything like that. Just popped out of nowhere and was like this really good prospect. He's like, whoa, who's this dude? Shorter dude with like a high ride fastball. So I think that that's a nice comp if he can achieve like Brian Wu type status, especially the Braves. They need it. With all the injuries they've had in the rotation. Like you've got Fuentes right now trying to figure it out. Bryce Elder is like lucking into like being good right now, but that's not going to hold for too long, I don't think. But slider is also a really good pitch. I give him a 60 out of 65 on the slider. The curve, I give him a 55 out of 60 on. And one of the big things about Murphy is he has elite command. I give him a 60 out of 65 on the command already. I'm going to throw his fScores up here because fScores love this dude. What do you think about Owen Murphy, Owen? Besides that, you share the same name.
Yeah, no, not to kind of crap on my fellow Owens, but I'm admittedly not the biggest Owen Murphy guy. I like J.R. Ritchie a good bit more. I think just the combination of his size and then kind of the lack of velo. You mentioned the shapes, which are really good. I'm just not sure I see the depth of an arsenal there to kind of overcome the lower velo fastball. Good strike thrower. I just think it's like you're looking at a much different profile if he's kind of, sitting 94, 95 rather than kind of lower 90s. So Owen Murphy's a guy that I've admittedly been a bit lower on. Maybe the injury played a little bit to do with the velo. Maybe there's a little bit left there. I definitely think the control kind of gives him it eliminates a lot of the relief risk. I'm just not sure I see more than kind of a back end starter as things stand presently.
Oh man, I disagree with you there. I think this guy is solid number 3. I don't know if he's exactly like Brian Wu, but I think he's definitely a number 3 starter. As long as he maintains health. So you see here, 107 stuff, 119 control, 105 FERA. He might be one of the highest guys out of starters in that control statistic on fScores. So just keep that in mind. 237 JA ERA is a minor league Sierra too. And this is from 2025 through 2026 here. So I'm a big Owen Murphy dude. One of the great things that I think about when it comes to transitioning from minors to majors, pitchers with good command transition faster and easier into the majors than those without.
I'd agree, but I think like looking, like you mentioned Elmer Rodriguez earlier. I'm just not sure I see what makes kind of Owen Murphy's upside significantly higher than Rodriguez's. That's kind of where I'm at. I think Rodriguez has the better secondaries in the deeper pitch mix. But I think for fantasy, like he's not a pitching prospect that really interests me. I'd much rather kind of shoot for those higher risk, higher upside guys than those, probably, high probability starters in a good pitching development org. Maybe you get a little bit more there. I'm just not sure I see the fantasy intrigue with Owen Murphy, especially in kind of shallower leagues when you have, 200 prospects rostered.
All righty. Number 4, we will differ on Owen Murphy. That's okay. Number 4, Khristian Curtis. Khristian is spelled with a K. So Khristian. This is a guy that's really popped to me this spring because we actually got like pitch level data from this guy. Because like if you just look at the fScores here, 104 stuff, 104 control, 98 FERA, just kind of mid, 16.3 K minus walk rate. It's like, okay, 335 JA ERA, which is Sierra. Like all those are like above average stats, but there's nothing that like really pops about anything that we're looking at on this fScore board here. But he had a really good start. Look at this from this year, 9 strikeouts, 0 walks in this last start from him, 62.5% strike rate. That's pretty insane. That's a really good command from Khristian Curtis here. So Khristian Curtis, Pirates AA starting pitcher. This guy has a lot of pitches. He has a fastball, a slider, a cutter, a splitter, a curve, and he throws super over the top. So he more or less has like a very similar arsenal to Trey Savage, and he also has kind of a similar arm slot. It's not quite as over the top as Savage, and he's also a big dude, 6'5", 210. So like my comp is just like Trey Savage light or mini Savage or whatever, if you want to call him that. Pirates are really good at developing pitchers. Like they've been really good at that. And his fastball can touch up to 20 inches of induced vertical break, and he throws at 97. So his fastball is 95 to 97. Slider is an 87 to 89 mile per hour pitch. That's like a hard vertical slider, just like Savage. So I threw 60 grade on that slider. I give him a 50 out of 60 on the fastball. The splitter is pretty nasty sometimes when you can locate it. It's all about location with that splitter, but I give him a 50 out of 60 on that splitter because I think the movement profiles on it is good, but he just fails to locate it sometimes. Just kind of standard for a splitter, right? Like any splitter guy is going to come in, is going to like live or die based off the command of their splitter, more or less. But I think Khristian Curtis is a super interesting name to watch. He was not really in my rankings before this spring. But this is going to be a big time riser for me. What do you think about Curtis?
I agree. And I think, like, to expand on the Pirates pitching development point, something that can be overshadowed with kind of the Hernandezes and the Skeens is they have done a good job finding these kind of relievers and converting them to starters, like Carlson Reed being another one that's looked like a good find and on a non-day one pick. What interests me about Curtis is, like, you would think with his mix, especially his fastball, and just the depth of his arsenal, like there's a good mix of average to above average secondaries and off-speed pitches. He would be more of a strikeout guy. 116 and just under 109 innings in high A last year. So I'm kind of wondering if I'm kind of wondering if he is like, if he's more of this kind of K guy, or he's more of this, are we going to see him kind of tap in more as a kind of pitch to contact guy? But I think the mix is really interesting. I still think there's a wide range of outcomes there, especially the injury history worries me a little bit. They could push him into a bullpen role, but it's a good pitching development organization. I think the extension is really good, which helps his arsenal play up a little bit. I think the mix is interesting. It's just I'm a little bit. I think the verdict is still out on kind of what kind of pitcher are you getting in Khristian Curtis.
Yeah, I agree. But definitely a name to watch for. Just keep him on the radar. Number 3, Gavin Kilen with the Giants. So this guy was drafted last year and has kind of fallen behind. Like, nobody really talks about him. He's drafted actually 13th. And like, there's all these guys who are drafted that everyone's been like talking about for like a year now. And he's pretty much ignored. And he's a second baseman, was really good. Second baseman, Tennessee. And he had a really nice week last week. 625 batting average, 2 bombs. And one of the really good things about Kilen, like 95% contact rate last week. And watch this. I'm going to pop him up right here on the screen on our fScores, and we can look how good this hit tool is, because this guy's a really good hit tool. So 87.2% contact rate so far in all of his minor league at bats. 51% swing rate too, so he's actually swinging a bit. 10.5% K rate, 10.5% walk rate. So good plate approach, really good batting average, really good contact guy. My comp from is Brendan Donovan. He just kind of reminds me of Brendan Donovan. And second base sucks. So, like, if you want to try to get a guy who's going to play second and stick at second and make it, this is almost like, I think I don't remember if I mentioned this to you or Doc, but when I had Blessing on the podcast, he told me, he's like, the rule of thumb for second base for fantasy with second baseman is find a second baseman with at least a 50 hit tool and then at least 50 in power or speed. And I think where Kilen I think he's got a 60 grade hit tool, and I think he has maybe a 55, 60 plate approach. But I think the power or the speed, either one of those could lean to 50. I put 45s out of 50s on both of those. But if he could actually like hit for power like he has early this season, even if it's not a lot, if it's 20 home run power, if you have a second baseman who can hit 280 with 20 bombs, like that's very useful in most leagues. So I think like Brendan Donovan, we just saw got traded for quite a bit. If Gavin Kilen can be a Brendan Donovan, like that's a really good player.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a really good outcome. I think, although you mentioned for fantasy, like a Brendan Donovan type is kind of less interesting in fantasy. And I think that I think Kilen is looking down that route, at least for me. I think there's a good amount of risk. I don't think the speed will ever be better than average, maybe a tick below. I don't think the defense at second is good. So I think there's a lot of pressure on his contact skills, and he does get on base at a good clip. So I think with those two things, there's a good real life player here. Maybe a kind of top upper third of the order guy that can hit and get on base. I'm just not, I don't love the upside for fantasy. I think it has there's some shades of similarities to kind of a Chase Young type profile. Maybe if you get a little bit of speed or a little bit more pop, you're kind of a Chase Meadroth type player. So like a solid middle infielder in deeper leagues, I'm just not really sure I see much more upside with Kilen for fantasy.
Yeah, for redraft, that's like you want him as like your middle infielder, probably not your second baseman in like a 15-teamer. For dynasty, he's gonna be great. For like 30 teamers, right? Because he's going to be cheap and he's going to be, a second baseman that starts every day, which is going to be important because he hits so well. You don't want like platoony middle infielders. It's like 30 teamers. Like part of the goal is just don't get platoon bats. Like you want guys who are not platoons at every position, and you're going to do all right in a 30 teamer. And then like in points leagues, he's going to be good. So it's kind of league dependent, I think, with him on like what leagues he's going to be good at, and what league he's not going to be good at. But anyone who gets close to 90% contact rates, they're going to play no matter what. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So.
I think like one thing to watch, like I do play in a lot of Cats leagues, so that's part of my disinterest in Kilen. Same thing with Marek Houston, is like I do think they are, potentially average big league regulars. It's just not really especially at cost with where both are going in FYPDs. Like I don't want that kind of potentially boring regular in the first round of my FYPDs. I'd rather get much higher upside targets. I think another thing to watch too is like he's been more aggressive too in expanding the zone as a pro. So I'm interested to see if kind of that holds. Ideally with like a good contact guy for that, to see that like translating. You want to see like the strike zone awareness get a little bit better. So to see that at the lower levels is a little bit concerning to me. But I mean, I think Kilen very well could be like a 270, 350 guy who could maybe give you, 10 home runs and maybe close to double digit steals. And like there is, there's usefulness in that. I just don't think, unlike a Brendan Donovan, who is attractive in fantasy outside of extremely deep leagues because of his multi-position eligibility, I'm just not sure I really see that with Kilen. I think he's more of a maybe second base, maybe can give you some reps at first. I don't think the bat is good enough to play first. So like I mentioned with Young earlier, I think there's a real shot that you look at a guy who in the upper minors doesn't have a carrying tool at the plate, doesn't have carrying speed, doesn't have carrying defense. And then that's a tough profile to get into lineups every day.
Hey, if he's sitting second in front of Bryce Eldridge and Rafi Devers for the next 10 years, that's going to be a lot of runs.
That's true. I think the counting stats are what makes his profile slightly more appealing, but I would not want Gavin Kilen as my starting second baseman, even in a 30-teamer. He's a guy that ideally I'd like to have like come off my bench if I need like someone to help me in, average ratios or OBP down the stretch, but not a guy that I'd want to start every day.
All righty. Number 2. This is a guy you're going to want to start every day. It's Seth Hernandez. We have pitch level data now for Seth Hernandez, so let's look at that. So Seth Hernandez made a start, 7 strikeouts, 0 walks, just ridiculous. 69.2% strike rate with only a 23% ball rate. That's insane for a freaking high schooler. Like what? So yeah, Seth Hernandez, a negative Sierra. Like what? What is going on here? This guy is so good that he's got negative Sierras going. And this is what's interesting, is that his cutter was his primary fastball in this start. So he threw the cutter 11 times. He only threw 39 pitches, by the way. So 39 pitches. He had 7 strikeouts and 0 walks. Owen, this is just crazy what this guy did. So 89 mile per hour cutter, 72.7% whiff rate. What? All right. Sinker, 10 pitches, 98 mile per hour sinker, 10.5 inches of vertical movement with 8.9 horizontal. That's not including gravity. What? Like those are ridiculous pitches. Okay, next pitch. Curveball. 80 mile per hour curveball. 50% swing strike rate. 8 pitches. So 4 whiffs on 8 pitches on the curveball. Okay. Changeup, which the changeup and the fastball are supposed to be his best 2 pitches. His changeup he only threw 6. 66.7 swing strike. So that means he got 4 whiffs on 6 pitches on the changeup. 7 inches of vertical movement, 8 horizontal. Okay. Fastball, 98 average velocity here. 11.5 inches of vertical movement before gravity. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. When you're adding the gravity to get induced vertical break, depending on where you're playing and atmospheric conditions, it's going to be between 6.8 to 8.2 is the general range that you're going to add for gravity. So that means that this is like an 18 to 20 inch ride fastball. So every single one of these pitches is absolutely ridiculous from Hernandez. I don't know, man. I feel like we'd be crazy to like make him a top 25 prospect already. Cause like based on what we saw here through this one start, like I kind of want to be crazy and just like push him up. Like I would like right now, I would much, and I was mad when the Cardinals picked Liam Doyle ahead of Seth Hernandez, but right now I'm like even more mad. I'm like, really? Like, just like, it's not worth the proximity. Like it's just not worth getting the guy who's going to be playing this year. And Seth Hernandez is going to be a 2027, late 2027, early 2028 guy. It's not worth the extra year of proximity or whatever to miss on. Like Seth Hernandez is looking like the next Paul Skeens.
And I think too, it's like another thing you mentioned, like Hernandez's fastball, like it's not even his best pitch, which is just absurd. I think you could make an argument that he has 2 double plus pitches in his fastball and changeup, and then like the delivery isn't super high effort. Like there's a good amount of arm action, but I think this is a guy you could be looking at with, potentially four at worst plus pitches, who's like 6'4", 225, 230 when he's maxed out. Not really any glaring command concerns. I had him, I want to say 27th at my end of the season rankings last year. So I'm kind of already borderline top 25 with him. I had a lot of people that were kind of giving me some pushback on having him as number 3 in my FYPD rankings. And I'm like, if you're going to take a swing on a prep arm in the top 3, I even saw him falling to, later in some drafts. Like I think in the 30-man, one of the 30-mans that I'm in, he was like 27th. So like kind of end of the first round, which I think was just kind of absurd. I think he's like that. He's the prep arm where you just kind of, you're willing to overlook all the precedent. And I think stuff wise, like he's, in my opinion, at the same level of as Jackson Jobe was coming into the draft. And, he was the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball before kind of the injuries got to him. And I think Hernandez has that upside. And I think realistically, there's a chance that we could see him get there, maybe kind of a Ryan Sloan type rise, except I think Hernandez could be even better. And I think that he could be in that number 1 overall pitching prospect discussion this time next year.
Yeah, he definitely has higher potential than Sloan, I think, just
For
because
sure.
of the added velocity and some of the movement characteristics he has. I can't believe how good his command was. Like that's the most shocking thing was the 69% strike rate in his first professional start. Like that's absolutely ridiculous. So that's the most impressive thing to me. So for me, I had him in like 50 something. Just because there's always the fear with high school guys. You're like, okay, if they get hurt, they get TJ, you lose a year. They could turn to Andrew Painter where they lose their fastball. They don't get the spin back on the fastball. So like that's the fear with him. But I think that it's warranted. It's worth it at this point to just get over that. And like you should be picking him or you should be trying to trade for him. Like I would definitely trade Doyle for him. With Cade Anderson is a little closer maybe to me, but I'd probably trade Cade Anderson for Seth Hernandez at this point too. And like I had Cade Anderson at 27 in my last rankings.
I agree. And I love that you brought it up too, because I don't think a whole lot, in my opinion, separates Cade Anderson and Seth Hernandez. I think Hernandez's upside is higher. I think it's mainly just kind of higher proximity versus a guy who's going to be a few years out. I think right now, if you were to trade Cade Anderson, you could get Hernandez plus. I have 4 Hernandez shares. One of them I acquired along with Bryce Rayner, Dante Nori, and a second for Season Burns. I don't regret that at all. Like heavily rebuilding 30-teamer that I'm in. And I think another thing with Hernandez too, that I kind of quells the potential TJ fear for me is like, even if he does go the kind of Painter similar route where he gets hurt, loses a bit on the fastball, if you're looking at a guy with a 55 fastball versus a borderline kind of double plus fastball, you're still looking at a guy who's probably going to be a number 2 in the big leagues, especially with, I think his secondaries are better. I think his changeup is better than any one of Painter's pitches were at the same point in his development. And so I think it gives him a floor that you don't often see from a prep arm, especially as you mentioned with the strike throwing. I think even if he does lose a bit on the fastball due to a TJ, I'm still pretty comfortable saying the floor is, a number 2, number 3.
Yeah, I agree. Number 1 is the most popular player in all of baseball, maybe like the last week. It's James Tibbs III. Sounds like a rich kid. So James Tibbs III,
like British Parliament sounding name.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like he sounds like he should have a monocle on, like looking at stock reports or getting ready to go on his PJ somewhere. But James Tibbs III has 7 home runs already, and last week he had 5. Just last week, so obviously AAA started earlier. So the dude is absolutely mashing. Yeah, it's PCL. So we have to take a little bit of a grain of salt into that. So, never forget PCL. Contact rates, 78% over the last year and a half. If I zoom for just 2026, we're looking at a 72% contact, 79% zone. So those aren't great, but he's hitting the balls the right way. 95 average EV, 106.8 90th, 108.7 max so far on the season. And look at this. He has 7 bombs with only a 3.4% air pull, Owen. Like, how in the world does that happen? 34.5% barrel rate. That's how in the world that happens. So James Tibbs III having a ridiculous season so far, which is why he's number 1 in the first iteration of the T10. My comp from is Mike Yastrzemski. So his build, his swing, his skills, just reminds me so much of Mike Yastrzemski, except the fact this is the difference. I think he could be Mike Yastrzemski not in a platoon. I think he could be Mike Yastrzemski, who doesn't have to play in San Francisco, not anymore because he was already traded from San Francisco. I don't think they're going to trade for him back. So it doesn't have to play in San Francisco where it sucks for lefty power, and won't be in a platoon. So he's going to play against everybody because so far I don't see really any splits issues with what he's doing. So I think that if you put Mike Yastrzemski all year, what would he be? 28, 30 home run guy, hits 240, something like that. Really nice number 5, number 6 hitter in most lineups. That's what I think he is. I don't think he's a superstar. My friend Raymond texted me that he had a trade offer. Someone offered him James Tibbs III for his Kate Anderson, talking about Kate Anderson, for his Kate Anderson. And he's like, should I do this? Tibbs has been so awesome this year. And I was like, no. No, Raymond, do not do that. What are your thoughts on that kind of thing? Because I think that anyone who's pumping James Tibbs is the second coming right now, it's a little too early for that. I don't think he's that good. I think he's going to be a solid starter, but I don't think he's that good.
Yeah, no, I think with Tibbs, I'd be a little bit lower on the power, although a lot of the metrics look great. 13-degree launch angle is going to play. It's a small sample size against lefties, so I do kind of have a little bit of concern about that. I think one thing, there's some things to like, and there's some things to be really concerned about. Granted, small sample size so far. He doesn't chase a ton like some other power hitters do, but I mean, the swing rate is low. The 74.6 zone contact indicates he's a little bit passive because the swing strike rate is not egregious for a power hitter. I think Tibbs is, I like the Yastrzemski comp a lot, actually. I think he could be slightly better to where maybe he gets some appearances against lefties. But I think you're looking at a guy who, can get on base at an okay clip, who's going to hit 240, 250 and give you 25 bombs and play solid corner outfield defense.
Yeah, he's actually really good against lefties. In his career so far, he has a 291 batting average against lefties. And it's almost like a reverse split. He has an 80% contact rate against lefties, 74% against righties. So he's almost better against lefties. So yeah, he's not going to have platoon issues like Yastrzemski, but very similar swing and mechanics. And I think very similar skill set, except that he's just going to play every day instead of being a platoon player. So that means has more potential than Yastrzemski. But I think if you just extrapolated Yastrzemski out as if he was playing full seasons, I think that's kind of like what you might be able to get with Tibbs.
Yeah, agreed. It still pains me as a Red Sox fan that they traded him for 5 broken Dustin May starts when the Dodgers openly admitted that they were unconfident in May and that they were even thinking about shutting him down before the trade. Just absolutely atrocious trade, and not even mentioning Zach Earhart, who also could be a solid big league outfielder. But Tibbs is interesting. I think, like you said, I can kind of see a 5'6" guy, maybe not your kind of fantasy star, but just kind of that guy that you kind of look at with your third outfield slot is just kind of a high floor guy who you kind of know what you're getting. Maybe I can kind of see a Kyle Manzardo type production, but from the outfield. I don't think the average is going to be great. Maybe you could be looking at a 240 guy, but he'll hit 25 plus home runs, get on base at a decent clip, and there's fantasy value in that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's our T10 for week 1. And if you sign up for MLB Data Warehouse, you actually get an article from me, not just the podcast. The podcast is free, but you'll get the article. And guess what? That article has extra players in it. So you actually get 15 write-ups instead of just the 10 that you're going to get on the podcast. So I'm going to give you a little teaser here. I'm going to give you the 5 names that I wrote up, but I'm not going to give you any information on them. I had number 11 was Jaden Fowski, number 12 Johnny Level, 13 Joseph. Man, I just heard worked on the pronunciation for this name and I still don't have it. Zero. You had to see him because Big Ten, right?
I did actually see a Zero start last year. I liked Zero.
Zero. Is that how the announcer says it too?
Yeah, I think I think it's like the D is silent, so it's just a Zero.
Zero. Okay, number 14 is Cam Tilley, who I saw live, throwing a no-hitter, 5 no-hit innings, and then pulled after 58 pitches, which pissed me off because I was like, man, we're going to see a no-hitter first week of the season. This is awesome. And then they pulled him after 5 innings because he was a reliever at Auburn, not a starter. But fastball's fire. And 15, AJ Ewing. So if you want more data, and I even have more runners-up names in the article, you have to go sign up for MLB Data Warehouse. So make sure you do that, and make sure you sign up because of Tim and Owen. Make sure you tell John that so he pays the right people. All right? Yeah. All right, Owen. You got anything else?
Just that intro song. I feel like I've been on enough pods now. We should get my name on there. But I think especially this time of year, and just to add on to kind of the prospect side, there's still kind of the hesitancy of like the small sample size. So I do think you can I remember this time last year, like Christian Campbell turning a lot of heads. Obviously not every prospect is going to kind of have that type of rise, but I do think it presents a really good buying opportunity for prospects where you can kind of get on these guys that have turned heads. Especially for me, especially when I'm rebuilding, like I like taking the swings on these prospects that have really impressed in a small sample. You just kind of don't quite know where they're going yet. But I think now, like Tibbs for me, I'm aiming to have my update out this weekend. Like he's looking like a guy who will at the very least be in my top 100, maybe even push my top 75, but I'm not sure like the market is quite there on him yet. So yeah. I think it's interesting when you see in the first couple weeks of minor leagues, like, guy has a really impressive start, even when the kind of stuff is ticked up. If you look for a pitcher or, you kind of have a glaring issue for a hitter that's now looking a bit more manageable. I don't think the kind of market, I think it takes I would say like even into kind of late April, early May, you can still kind of see the market be a little slower to adapt on these guys.
Yeah. And we have a good track record here with the T10s. Last year, Doc and I on the first T10 prospect from last year. So exactly 1 year ago, Cam Schlittler was a T10 pitcher, and look at him now. And so is Ryan Bergert, who was like a nobody, and then actually made the majors and was like actually producing in the majors, a complete nobody. And I had him on the T10s week 1. So that's why you listen to this podcast. And that's why you subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse. All right, everybody. Peace out. Bother John to get Owen added to the wrap. Come on. Next step. Let's do it.
MLB Data Warehouse, yeah, we bring the spree. Prospects, DFS, betting strategy. John's grumpy, Tim scouted like a man possessed. Doc drafting comeback stories better than the rest. But the tools are elite and the content's free. And your fantasy trophy gonna look prestigious. ML.